All right, today on the Second Chance podcast, we're joined by Duncan Brown, a man who knows what it means to turn his life around. After 2 decades of struggling with alcohol, he quit drinking, smoking, and unhealthy habits to pursue a life of purpose and impact. Duncan is the author of Real Men Quit and a passionate advocate for rethinking our relationship with alcohol. He's here to share his journey, challenge misconceptions, and inspire us to see sobriety in a whole new light. Duncan, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to getting into all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You've had a lot going on, but you also had you had a turning point. And what was that your turning point? The moment you knew you needed to stop drinking and change your life. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, it wasn't really a moment as such. I mean, I wish it was because, then it would have been way more dramatic, wouldn't it? I'd be staring into the mirror, 4 a.m., moodily lit. But, for me, it was a bit of a slower process. Maybe I'm not as smart as all the people that have those moments. I don't know. But, I as you say, I've been drinking for kind of 20 years and looking at my life one way, you'd think, oh, he's doing all right for himself. I was reasonably successful at what I did. I had a beautiful wife, nice place to live. We were doing all right. And we thought, well, the next logical step is start a family, isn't it? Have a kid. We'll do that. So we started trying, and that was quite good fun, wasn't it? And it kind of seemed to be like pretty jolly as we were going along. It seemed to all be going quite nicely until all of a sudden it just wasn't, because my wife had a miscarriage and basically everything fell apart. And I mean, I don't think I need to tell you or any of your listeners what an amazingly hard thing that was for her, physically, mentally, emotionally. It had a huge effect on her. But I think what made it worse was I just wasn't there for her. My default response to anything difficult, to hard emotions and hard times, was always just to have a drink. So I kind of poured myself into a bottle of wine and sort of left her to it. And honestly, now I feel pretty bad about it. But that kind of was the thing that sparked it, because that made life really, really difficult. It made it really strained our relationship, and it kind of forced me to look at myself and ask myself some questions like, what are you doing, Duncan? What are you here for? What is the point of you? And I guess if I had have had that kind of moodily lit moment, the question I would have looked in the mirror and asked myself would have been, what do you want, Duncan? Do you want another drink, or do you want to start a family? Now, while I never kind of got the question quite that chiseled and accurate, I did at least make the right decision. And almost 9 months to the day after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born.
Ah,
And that was fantastic. Well, for about 10 minutes. And there was like a whole other world of problems, wasn't it? But, those are good problems. Those are different problems. I like those problems.
take us back. Everyone has that onboarding moment with when they had their first drink or when they consumed alcohol socially, whatever that might look like. But when did that get started for you?
Yeah, I mean, I am, I guess, not untypical of most people. It started, I was a teenager. I look, I mean, I didn't have a difficult upbringing, not really. I mean, I found school pretty difficult. It School was not designed for people like me.
Yeah.
My teachers had certain expectations, and I had certain expectations, and those expectations very rarely met. And they honestly just thought I was being difficult, but I thought I was trying to help them out by pointing out there was a better way of doing things, but they didn't agree, did they? So I guess for a lot of my early life, I didn't feel like there was a place where I could succeed. I didn't feel like there was a place that I could belong. I felt very kind of out of place, like a pig in a hen house, I think.
Yeah.
And when it came to sort of socializing, I think a lot of that translated into nervousness. I wanted to go and talk to the pretty girls. I really, really did want to go and talk to the pretty girls, but I was too nervous. I was, too scared, whatever reason, just too anxious about it, until I discovered alcohol. And, I found out that it was confidence in a can. And it was like, this is brilliant. It was like all my Christmases came at once. It seemed to be doing an awful lot for me. And when I first started out, it didn't seem to be an issue. I didn't drink that much when I started out. And it was always very social, as you say, it was always parties. It was always with lots and lots of other people. But as time went on, the amount I drank went up and the amount of people I drank with went down.
Yeah, and you also live in a country to where there's really no alcohol laws at a young age. You guys can say, like, here in the States it's 21. Is there not any age restrictions in
Well, so I mean, technically, when I was growing up, there were laws about not
got
being
it.
able to buy alcohol under the age of 18, but like nobody really paid any attention to them. There was you would always find the place where you could go and buy underage. I mean, the first drink I ever had in a pub, I was 16, so it's a bit ridiculous. And to there's not really any restrictions on what age your children have to be before you can give them alcohol.
Yeah.
So my parents allowed me to drink a little bit from about the age of, I don't know, 9 or 10, something like that. I was very young, and they'd let me have a little bit with meals because they thought, well, we'll teach Duncan to drink responsibly. And, they were half right. They did teach me to drink. I just
Yeah.
didn't get the responsibly bit, did I?
That's I like that. Do you tell them? Do you remind? Are they, if they're still around, or did you have the opportunity to remind them of that, Duncan? That
Yeah,
that
no,
they were
I'm
half
very
right.
lucky. They're still around, and I live in the same town as them. I see them an awful lot, and I don't push them too hard on it,
Yeah.
shall we say? I mean, my mum and I have had a few kind of like long, meaningful
Yeah.
conversations about it, and they they often follow the publication of my books. Strangely enough, my mum reads them and goes, "Really?" And then we have a chat about it. And I think what I always want her to realize, what I want people to realize, is that my story is a positive story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got rubbish at times. I went to some not very nice places, but sometimes you do have to go through the rough neighborhoods to get to the point that you want to get to. Not all of your journey is always going to be woodlands and beautiful views, is it? Sometimes you
Yeah.
have to go through the ropey parts of town to get to the nice part of town. And I love where I am now, so that I think is more important than anything else. And I think she gets that.
But you mentioned your struggles with school, but you studied at Cornell and the Chartered Management Institute. How did both of those help shape your approach to overcoming addiction and helping others?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled a lot at school, and in credit to my parents, they did help out an awful lot. So I didn't do terribly badly at school. I got through high school, and I had a very good teacher who kind of pulled in a few favors, went to bat for me, which meant I got a place at a reasonably good university. And that sort of helped my academic career. However, most of the study that I've done, that I've really enjoyed, places like Cornell and the Chartered Management Institute, that's all in the last 10 years. I've done all of that as an adult, and it's sort of a bit strange finding yourself thinking, my gosh, I've only got 3 weeks before this essay's due. And then realizing that, like, when I was a student back in the day, like 3 weeks before an essay was due, I wouldn't even know what the title was. I wouldn't even know that I had an essay due in 3 weeks. So, yeah, it's kind of funny, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I strive to do is find an integrated approach to sobriety, to recovery, to helping people to get where they need to be. I think one of the problems with the community that I'm involved in, the people who work in that field, is it tends to be very, very siloed. So you tend to work in a particular sort of modality or technique. So you tend to come from a background, and that's the background that you kind of tend to stick in. And I don't like being pigeonholed. I want to know what everybody is doing, and I want to take the good bits. And I am not Bruce Lee, but I definitely ascribe to that philosophy. You know, study everything, take what works, discard what doesn't, and add what is uniquely your own. And I think, the analogy I would use is a lot of people working in the recovery space at the moment. They're like martial artists before MMA came along. They're all standing there going, "Oh, my technique is the technique. This is the way to fight. We are the toughest warriors." But none of them really know, because none of
Yeah.
them have got in the cage with each other, and that's what we need. We need a bit of MMA so that we can sort it out and find out what is the best technique and what helps people the most, and more importantly, I suppose, what find out ways of tailoring what we do to help the individual in front of us, rather than trying to make the individual in front of us fit the technique that we use. Because at the end of the bend, that is what matters, the individual in front of us, not kind of some vague loyalty to a philosophy. I genuinely think we've got a ways to go to help people in the best way that we possibly can, because failure is not good with the work that I do.
There's a gap between your high school. I'm not sure what you all call it, but your required learning, so to say, and then your college. How long was the time frame before you went to Cornell and the Chartered Management Institute?
Oh, so I mean, both of those have been in the last 6 or 7 years, really. But yeah, they've all been since I got sober. I mean, I did some studying, and I'm somebody who's always been interested in learning stuff. So I
Yeah,
did a lot of learning even when I was drinking. I read a lot, and to my eternal shame, I even read some stuff like that, and I kind of, you
yeah,
probably drunk a bit too much, Duncan, if you need to read with one eye closed. But I'd try it. But definitely the real progress that I've made, I think, intellectually, yeah, it's all been in the last. Well, I stopped drinking about 9.5 years ago, so I'm just saying
yeah.
10 because it's easier.
Um,
That's
how how long how long had you been out of high school, whatever y'all call your secondary school, before you went to college? Is that a 10 year, 20 year?
Oh no! So I mean, I went through the whole education system. I did do. I passed the equivalent of your high school certificate and went to the equivalent of a state college kind of thing.
Got it.
Yeah, I did that, but I didn't do particularly well because I just like, who knew? Lots of people drink beer at
Yeah,
university. Who knew? So I didn't do enormously well, and I have a passing interest in the subject that I studied, but it certainly hasn't kind of equipped me for life or designed my life. I met a lot of really great people there. I learned some interesting things.
yeah,
I learned a few skills. Most of it, though, was helping out in like the student life kind of thing. So I did a lot of drama. I did some kind of political stuff and things like that. That's where I learned most. I didn't exactly excel at lectures because, well, some of them were in the morning.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's hard to get moving. What
Oh yeah.
what do you when does your wife enter the picture? Is she been around, for the duration, or at what point in time does she enter it?
No, funny enough, we had a bit of a conversation about this recently. So I met my wife in right at the start of 2009. So what's that? It's 15 years that we've known each other. We've been married 10.5 years. Um, so yeah, I mean, she knew me at my worst, shall we say? And she is. I think she's a big part of why I changed. Because I mean, ultimately, before I met her, I didn't really have a strong enough reason to want to change. There wasn't,
Yeah.
I was on one level I was successful. I was doing a lot of stuff in my community, very involved in local politics. I was mayor of my hometown for a while. I was doing quite well, and I kind of had meaning and purpose, but none of it mattered to me enough, I suppose, to change. And then I met her, and look, we've both changed a lot over the last 15 years. I mean, who hasn't changed a lot over the last 15
Yeah.
years? We've both been on our own journey, and she absolutely helped me. She's one of those wonderful, wise, deep, gentle people who doesn't generally tell you that you've done the wrong thing and you're being an idiot. She is quite good at gently nudging you in the right direction. So that was absolutely what I needed. Somebody who was compassionate and loving, who would just kind of show me that there was an alternative and generally point me in the right direction.
Yeah. That's I could see that because I think there's a lot of power in that, and power in that um, what a spouse and a wife or husband, whatever that, whoever, when you're listening to this, think about that. And then sometimes we're resistant to those folks, and that's when you create that divorce. And because you're only going to tolerate it for so long, but it's good that you evolved with that, and and you're it sounds like you followed really closely to like a life's plan or whatever, right? As you're realizing and you're having these really awesome light bulb moments that going off. What do you think the biggest misconception people have about alcohol and sobriety, and how do you help them reframe their thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's kind of two questions. So I'm going to give
Yeah,
you two answers, whether you wanted
yeah,
it or not.
please.
The biggest misconception that people have about alcohol, I think, is that it's safe and it doesn't have any harm and it doesn't have any bad effects. And unless you get to the point where you're putting vodka on your cornflakes, you don't have a problem. And one of the things I would really like to help people to realize is what low risk drinking looks like, because surveys, studies have been done that that kind of prove the fact that there are a lot of people out there who consider moderate drinking to be anything less than drinking first thing in the morning. So if
Yeah,
you're not like literally getting out of bed and cracking a beer, then it's moderate. Anything less than that is moderate, and that is of course just not true. I mean, I never, well, not never, but I very, very rarely drank before 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I'd work pretty hard. I'd be busy during the day. I had a job, and then I'd be out at community meetings. I was doing a lot of stuff, and then I'd come home and I'd drink a couple of bottles of wine. But a lot of people would still count that as moderate drinking, but it really isn't. That's genuine out and out product problem drinking, and I
yeah.
can bore you with the problems if you want. But I think I'd like people to kind of reset their belief of what moderate drinking or low risk drinking looks like. And I don't think the government helps because it keeps changing its advice, and its advice is always put in units, and nobody really knows what units is. So to simplify things, my definition of what low risk drinking looks like, and if you want to argue it, I've got the science to back it up. But one drink, don't have more than one drink. Don't drink more than twice a week, and don't drink more than 3 times a month. And if you do that, you will never have any issues with alcohol. It will never affect your performance, and it will always be fun. And that's the thing. People think if you drink more, you have more fun, but actually, the science is fairly robust. We understand the effect that alcohol has on your body, and actually, all of the pleasurable feelings that you get come from that first drink. You just end up chasing it with the second and the third, and you don't increase the pleasure. That's when you actually start to feel the negative consequences of it. So, just one drink. If your listeners are going to take anything away from this, that is it. Just one drink. Don't have more than one, because the fun is always in the first one. And then what's the misconception about sobriety? Well, like, it's sober. I mean, literally, sober is a synonym for boring, isn't it? As is teetotal and temperance. Like, all of the words for describing people who don't drink are also words for describing people who are boring. And I can assure you that my life is a whole lot more enjoyable. My life is a lot more fun than it ever has been. It's certainly way more fun than it was when I was drinking, because I was miserable all of the time. And again, I can get into the science of that if you really want to be bored. But, the effect of alcohol on your brain is it is a depressant. So yeah, it's not going to make you have fun. The drinking is not fun. Your friends are fun. The drinking is not fun. Football is fun. It's the stuff that you do whilst you're drinking that you enjoy. You just happen to be drinking at the same time. If you do it sober, you actually enjoy it a whole lot more. And that's, another thing I'd love people to really understand. Not drinking, like, it's just, it is so much better than drinking. Just, I cannot over egg that particular pudding.
You I like that egg, that particular pudding. Um, you guys, um, speak to one or two of those problems though. You said you didn't want to, but I think that's what I want to. I want to speak to the audience, right? So yeah, I think there's some power in you giving us one or two of those. What was fueling those two bottles of wine? You don't have for, and here's what I don't want to do, Duncan, is I don't want to hit no triggers, right? I don't want to. So if it's not something we're comfortable talking about, that's fine. And folks, if we for you is what have you, whatever that looks like. But I am interested in just kind of what was fueling that two bottles of
Yeah.
wine.
So, look, I mean, I drank primarily because I thought it helped me to relax.
Yeah,
And I think that is such a common one. It's something I come across all the time when I work with people, and that's the kind of the irony of it that I'll ask somebody why, it's like, well, what's the problem with drinking? Why do you want to stop drinking? And they'll go on about their health. They'll go on about their relationships. They'll go on about the impact it's having on their work. They'll go on about the fact that they just feel tired all of the time. That everything seems to be a drag, that, life seems to be kind of black and white. It's just not as enjoyable as it once was. And I go, oh, okay. So what benefit do you get from drinking? I mean, why do you do it? Why do you enjoy it? And they go, oh, well, it really helps me deal with stress and it really helps me to relax. And I just go, are you sure? Because what you just described is a whole
yeah,
bunch of very unrelaxing, stressful stuff that is caused by alcohol. And it's, oh, yeah. And I think like a lot of people, I genuinely thought that if I didn't have a couple of glasses of wine, and by a couple of glasses, I mean a couple of bottles every night, I would just be too stressed to do anything and I wouldn't be relaxed. And it took me a little while, but as soon as I saw it for what it was, as soon as I started to realize that alcohol was the thing that was causing all of that stress, getting rid of it, that was like such a huge thing. It's like a
yeah,
massive weight off my shoulders. And actually, again, if you really want to dig into the science of it, I'm sure your listeners are smart enough to know that cortisol is the stress hormone.
yeah,
And, so therefore, if alcohol really reduced your stress, it would reduce your cortisol levels, wouldn't it? Except, of course, it doesn't. It does the exact opposite. Every unit of alcohol increases your cortisol level by 3%. So if you're having a couple of drinks, whether that's a couple of like reasonable strength beers or a couple of glasses of wine, that is going to push your cortisol up by about 20%. That's like, that is not relaxing, is it? That is causing you stress. So I mean, that's one of the big things. I mean, I was like, I'd got to the point in life where I just thought, wow, life is so stressful and I'm getting on a little bit. That is why I'm tired all the time, why I feel bad all the time, why I feel miserable all of the time. And when I stopped drinking, it was so quick. It was like, the next day I woke up and I was like, oh, I actually feel like getting out of bed for a
you
change.
feel like
For
feel like getting
going
out of
from
bed.
just like snooze, 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 snooze until about, 6 or 7 minutes after the latest possible time I could get up and still make it to work on time. That's I'd be pressing snooze until then. I just started jumping out of bed and it was like, oh, I know what, I actually feel like doing some exercise. And the whole energy thing, it's like night and day. It's like I am a different person. I feel better now in my mid 40s than I did in my early 20s by
Yeah.
a huge amount.
Same, Duncan. I don't drink as near. I quit drinking beer altogether, and we'll snip on some little tequila, and we try to find the high end stuff. So it's an experience, but we kind of just quit having alcohol in the house and not having drinks here. And like you said, I didn't realize I was kind of almost following your plan of one drink, right, out or with dinner or friends or whatever. And sometimes that leads to overindulging. But I told someone the other day. Duncan, they were talking to me. I just turned 50, and they were like, it's 50. I said, no, dude, I feel better at 50 than I did at 25. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I'm not drinking myself into oblivion and trying to balance as many girlfriends as I could. My stress and all the things is, but alcohol played a tremendous part in that, and just feeling good.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah,
that is one of the problems that we have. We're a bit rubbish at really spotting the effect that things have on us, particularly when they happen gradually. And that's what happens with so many things. Like if your diet is bad, you start feeling bad, but it's only a little bit worse each day, a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse. Same with drinking, same with smoking. But if you sort of like take the start of the year to the end of the year, if you suddenly felt the way you did at the end of the year, the first day of the year, like if it was sudden instead of gradual, you go to the hospital. You'd be like, oh, there's something really wrong with me. But because it's gradual, we don't really notice it. So we don't really kind of notice the changes, and we just think that's life. And then we get even more grateful for that little buzz that we get from the first drink because we really need it then. And wow, if we got a little buzz from the first drink, we'll probably get a bigger one from the second drink.
from the
But
second.
I'm sure that's the other thing that you've noticed. If you're actually trying to seek out the good stuff, trying to make something of it, that actually massively increases the pleasure that you take from it. Because so much of the drinking that people do is automatic. They don't even think about it. They drink the same brand of the same drink and they're just doing it because it's Friday. They don't even notice it. However, if you actually go out of your way to have something different and only drink it when it is really going to enhance the situation, then you notice it a lot more, and then you get more pleasure from it because it's actually, well, it's like a treat, isn't it? It's like something special. But the problem I think that society has is we have just abandoned this idea of a treat. I run a lot, and the I love running because you notice stuff that you'd never normally
Yeah.
notice otherwise. And I noticed that the local McDonald's, as I was jogging past it, they were selling birthday cake donuts. And like, I don't even want to pick on McDonald's in particular, but birthday cake donuts is everything that is wrong with the world. You
Yeah.
are supposed to eat birthday cake, well, on your birthday, aren't you? Not because it's Tuesday, kind of thing. And like, all right, I'll let you off. You have birthday cake at your friends' birthday parties, right? Fair enough. How many really close friends have you got though? What are we talking about? You got probably a dozen close friends, and then maybe I'll give you Christmas cake and something nice at Easter. So we're talking about like 15 times a year, once every 3 or 4 weeks. That's how often you're supposed to have birthday cake. But how often do we have birthday cake? We can just go and get some at
Yeah.
McDonald's, birthday cake donut on a Tuesday. And it's like, well, that's fine and everything, but it doesn't actually increase the pleasure you get from it. It reduces the pleasure you get from it because the pleasure of it is the novelty of the fact that you don't have it very often, and therefore it's a celebration and it's a nice thing. And I think we really need to get back to that. We need to start to understand that actually you can eat those kind of things. You like drink if you want to, but do it when it means something. Do it when it's special. Do it when you're actually going to enjoy it. And that way you'll increase the pleasure that you get from it.
Yeah, we call them treats here in the house, and we try to teach that same with our kids and even myself as well. You We had some opportunities here to lean back, and what I wanted to ask you about was just some personal challenges, dyslexia, your wife's health struggles. And what role did they play in building your resilience and helping fuel your mission?
Yeah, so I mean, looking at the dyslexia first, I think I'm enormously lucky because I've been dyslexic for ages, like before it was fashionable. And there's a lot of people who talk about neurodiversity these days, and I think that's great. And I really like I applaud that, and I want to get that out into the open. And I think one of the things I'm really lucky about is a lot of what you hear these days about people thinking that it's their superpower, that it's actually an advantage rather than a disadvantage. I worked all of that stuff out like decades ago. So I worked out that it was a part of who I am, and either I have to stop being me or I have to find a way of coping with it. So I learned a lot of coping mechanisms. Many of them are kind of mental tricks, if you like. And that meant when I started wanting to improve my life around alcohol and smoking and diet. Uh, what I found was actually there's a lot you've got to do around the beliefs to start off with, but there's also a lot that you've got to do around the thought process. And all of those things around the thought process, they're just mental tricks. And I'm like, oh, I'm already really good at these. I've been doing this sort of stuff my whole life. I literally cannot tell left from right without stuff like this. So it was kind of like, if anything, it made that process easier. I mean, it was no fun at school. Like I said earlier, I had expectations. I thought that the teachers would like read my work and judge it on what it was. It's writing. So you judge writing on the quality of the writing, the use of literary devices such as metaphor and assonance and imagery and things like that. That's what I thought. But of course, teachers don't. Teachers judge your writing on how neat it is, whether you have put the punctuation in the right places, and whether you have spelt the words correctly. And I was not very good at those bits, but I was quite good at the kind of poetic and the forming of, interesting ideas and juxtapositions and things like that. But they didn't value that, but I did. And that is why we clashed rather a lot. So, yeah, look, it had its hardships, but at the end of the bend, it's come round to being a blessing. And I think it's helped me more than it's hindered me. I mean, it's me. So, of course, it's like you can't divorce the two. And then you mentioned my wife has had a lot of health issues. She struggled with her mental health for long before I first met her, really. But it's one of the things that has defined periods of our relationship. And she's been very ill at some points, and it's been difficult for me. It's you know meant that there have been periods of time where all of the parental responsibility has fallen on my shoulders, and that's not much fun. I mean, trying to work and be a single father, it's hard, and I feel for anybody who does that all of the time. I really do. But again, it's not entirely easy. But I think it has forced us to be quite honest with each other. We've
Yeah.
got to the point where, there's no point in hiding stuff there. You can't have any artifice anymore. I mean, I am not recommending that you get your wife sectioned. It's not like that is not a relationship tip, my friend. But it does get you to a point where it's just, well, there is no point in putting up a mask, and we are totally honest with each other. And I think coming out the back of it, it's that recognition that um, if she wants to have good mental health, that means she has to work at it. And honestly, it's not really just true of her, is it? It's true of all of us. If we
Yeah.
want to have good health, if we want to have good physical and mental health, then we need to work at it. And she does. She works at it like a part-time job. And I'm so proud of all of the effort that she puts in. I really, really am, to stay well and to stay healthy for herself primarily, but for me and my daughter as well. And, it's an amazing thing. And I think that's one of those lessons that I, you know, I'd like people to take from our story, that you you can't sit around and expect to get money without being paid.
Yeah.
Sorry, without doing some work. That's the way it works, isn't it? You do stuff, people give you money. That's the way it works. And likewise, you can't expect to be healthy without putting in a little bit of effort. It doesn't have to be quite as extreme as my wife. It doesn't have to be a part-time job, but look, it's got to be something that you think about and do every day. Because if you don't brush your teeth fall out. If you don't take care of your diet, you're going to put on weight. You're going to get diabetes. You're going to get all of the nasty diseases. You're going to end up in the hospital system. And I know in the UK we're enormously proud of the National Health Service, and it's all right. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be spending a lot of time in hospital, because that's where you get hospital-borne diseases. That's where medical mistakes happen. You actually want to keep yourself healthy enough not to get involved in the medical system. That I think is such a fundamental thing. And you just got to take responsibility for that. You've just got to put in some effort. Like I say, it doesn't have to be a full-time job. It doesn't even have to be a part-time job. But if you're not doing anything, then, it's not going to work out so well for you, I am afraid. That's not great news, is it?
No, but it's true, right? And we
Yeah,
don't, we don't, we can't avoid that. We don't want to doom and gloom. But listen, folks, this is reality. You can't sugarcoat it, man. You got to take. There's an element. I had to do the same thing. I got one of my turning point moments was I after my son was born, we went to get life insurance, and my blood markers were all messed up, and I couldn't get qualified just to get term life insurance for in case something happened to me. So I had to go to work and get all that. Had to get healthy so I
yeah.
could just qualify, right?
Yeah, but I think really it is actually quite an optimistic statement. It is quite positive. It depends how you look at it, doesn't it? You can say, "Oh well, I've got to put my running shoes on, and I've got to go out for a run, and it's cold and everything, and I've got to actually cook my food. I can't just Uber Eats it the whole time. I can't just dial out. I've got to actually make some effort." You can look at it like that, or you can look at it another way. You can say to yourself, "Do you know what? I actually have the power. I'm in control of this. This is my choice. This is my decision. I don't have to rely on doctors. I have the ability to make the difference myself. It's not in my genes. It's not got anything to do with fancy pants, smart, targeted therapy or expensive machines in hospitals. It's down to what I do. It's down to being more active, eating better, uh, being careful around alcohol if you're still choosing to drink it, stopping smoking, stopping drinking, and then making sure you get some good sleep and drink a bit of water. Happy days. And ultimately, every single one of your listeners knows that. We know all of that. It is pretty simple. It's not always easy, but it is always simple.
You have that. You touched on it, and as we wrap up here, um, you touched on your leave it at one drink. Don't drink more than 3 times a month. I think is what your advice to us was, which is absolutely great advice. Is there anything practical stepwise that individuals can take to start seeing alcohol differently? Other than those things, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah. I cannot underestimate the importance of beliefs. Your
Yeah.
beliefs drive your behavior. There's something I talk about all of the time. And like, I know you guys have just had an election, and look, I know some of you are going to be happy with the result. Some of you are going to be unhappy with the result. But the thing is, everybody went out and voted. Why did they do that? It's because they believe that democracy is important. They believe that that is the right way to run a country. And geez, I think you're right. But it is actually a belief. It is not a cast iron fact. It is just what you believe, but your belief dictates your behavior. And that is true of voting. It is as true of drinking as well. And this is not, incidentally, my belief. This is what the science shows. There is a lot
Yeah.
of evidence showing that there is a very strong correlation between what you believe around alcohol, the positive outcomes that you believe you will get from it, and the amount that you drink. So if you can start to uncover those beliefs, identify them and examine them a little bit, ask yourself, like, honestly, does drinking make you sophisticated? Is that true? Or is that just because you've watched too much James Bond? Does drinking make you tough? You know, do you believe that? Or is that just because you've seen too many Budweiser commercials in the halftime break of the Super Bowl? You know, it's like you've got to think about where these things came from. Are they true and are they serving you? Because most of the time they're adverts and they're not serving you, they're serving whichever corporation put that belief into your head in the first place, precisely to drive your behavior, which is your
Yeah.
behavior to consume their product.
You touched on it, Duncan, that persuasion, that, it can be manipulation as well. I love marketing and I love advertising, but I also, it really helps me learn how those influence. And a lot of times that is all the goal is. The goal for you to crack your next code is for that. My last podcast, we were talking about relatability, the relatability of you and that Budweiser, whatever that brew is, and that outcome that you see on that screen is what they want you to feel, and
Yeah,
they want you to feel that you belong in that. You're
yeah,
absolutely
and
right.
and it works. You know, like
Yeah,
advertising works, and alcohol is one of the most advertised products on the planet. It is advertised on average 3 times more than any, other products. Why? Because it doesn't have any benefits.
yeah,
It's like it is literally all made up, so they have to advertise it very, 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 very heavily, and they've been doing it for years. You know, James Bond. James Bond is not a movie franchise. James Bond is a marketing machine, not simply for alcohol, although it is worth pointing out that Heineken spent 45 million euros, which is give or take $45 million. So quite a lot of money just to get Heineken into one of the Bond films. Not
yeah,
all of them, one of them. So why would they do that? Why would they do that? It's not because they're like you're supporting the arts, is it? They're not altruistically trying to keep the movie business producing high quality entertainment.
yeah,
No, it's because they know if they put Heineken on the screen in Daniel Craig's hand, you'll start to think if you drink enough of it, the girls will love you.
yeah.
But unfortunately, it is not true.
Now, tell me, how would you like for the listeners to get in touch with you and
Well,
to learn more about you?
yeah, I mean, one of the best ways to learn more about me, some would say learn more than you actually want to learn about me, is to read my first book, Get Over Indulgence, which is kind of like my little journey, my kind of like life story, how I went from drinking, smoking, eating junk food to peace, joy, focus, energy, happiness, all of the good stuff. And I'd like to offer that just as a gift to your reader, your listeners.
Yeah,
So if they go to getover.uk, that's getover.uk, just put that into your search engine of choice. I'll take you to a bit of my website where you can download a PDF or Kindle copy of that book, Get Over Indulgence. I don't want to kind of make it sound like it's educational or anything. I mean, you might learn something from it, but it's just a kind of interesting story with a
yeah.
few jokes, and it's just kind of gentle. Yeah, that's getover.uk, but it's also a bit of my website. So on there, you can find all of the socials. We're pretty busy on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find out about all of the stuff that we do. So, and if you've got any questions, please get in touch. I do genuinely love talking about this sort of stuff, and I love helping people. And if any of your listeners need a bit of a hand, I'm more than happy to try and help. And you know what, I might not be able to help you, but if I can't, I am pretty sure I know somebody who can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the power of this is as well. It's I enjoy helping people, and it connects me with the Duncans of the world and the folks that I believe that the voice that you hear sometimes at the right moment is the influence you need to take action. And I've had those moments myself, and I enjoy the conversations and getting to know, like ours today, where I got
Yeah.
to just
Well, look,
have a few
here's an
moments to get to know
interesting
you.
marketing analogy for you then. I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of touch points. The number of times you need to come in contact with a brand before you actually make the purchase. And
Yeah,
I think it's exactly the same with any kind of change.
yeah,
There are always a number of touch points on the journey. And it's very tempting for us to like go, well, look at me, I'm amazing. just because we happens to be the last touch point. You know, if I'm the one that helps you to stop drinking, I'm going to be going like, isn't it amazing? I'm a genius. I'm the one that's cured you, kind of thing. But actually, you know, what you've got to realize is there were a lot of touch points on
Yeah.
the journey that took you to coming to me and talking to me and me helping you to stop drinking. And, you know, I don't care where I am on that journey. If I can be a part of it, I want to be a part of it. I want to, if it's just a gentle nudge that makes you think a little bit more, and then, you know, a few weeks down the line, something else pushes you a little bit long, you know, and in a month you actually start to go on Google and do something about it. You know, I think that is as important as if you happen to be at the end of the journey.
Yeah. Definitely. And then just our ability to help amplify your message. And I'm excited to be able to do that. And as you continue to lift and rise and to reach more people. So whenever you want to jump back in here, as your situation changes and you're impacting, and we want to continue this conversation and celebrate some wins or talk about some losses. I hope you reschedule with me so we can revisit. But can't thank you enough for being
I,
with us today.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to do that, and you know, thanks again for the opportunity to get the message out there. It's really good, and I hope all of the listeners go on their favorite podcast platform and give you a 5-star review, so you know you can spread the love a little bit further and get the message out there a little bit more. And yeah, I'm doing something kind of exciting. I'm going to break a world record next year, so
Yeah.
we'll have to check back in after that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I will tease that one in our show notes definitely, so people will jump in. But I would absolutely love to hear more about that as that continues to evolve. So, thank you for being with us, Duncan.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for the opportunity, and you know, have a great week.